Once again, good morning to our friends from the media and the academe, our industry partners, our colleagues from PHINMA, and our guests who are watching online. Welcome to Our Students, Their Success, a press briefing by PHINMA Education. Before we formally start the program, we request everyone to take note of these reminders. This event is broadcasted on site at the Loft. We are also live on Facebook and YouTube. Please reserve your questions until the Q&A. And lastly, online guests may send questions through the live chat. Please all rise for the invocation followed by the national anthem.
Glorious and blessed God, we praise and thank you for this gathering and your purpose for it. We place our work and ourselves into your hands. We ask that you cover us with your peace and wisdom as we brave a fresh start. Anoint our creativity, our ideas, our energy so that even the smallest task may bring you honor. Even though we are physically distant at this time, may you bind us in love so that we will be able to learn and work together for your glory. May the work that we do and the way we do it bring hope, life, and courage to all with whom we minister in the university. Bless our administration with wisdom and discernment, our students and employees with commitment and compassion, our families with courage and strength. Establish the work of our hands and bring to fulfillment all that you have given us to do in these trying times. We stand together in your great presence as we ask and pray for all these things to be sanctified. In your mighty name, amen.
Again, magandang umaga sa lahat. Thank you for being with us as we share the stories of our students and their success. I am Gian Tan and I'll be your host for today. To formally start our program, may we introduce PHINMA's chairman and CEO, Mr. Ramon Del Rosario, to give the opening remarks.
Good morning, colleagues, partners, friends from media, and guests watching via live stream. Welcome to the annual PHINMA Education Press Briefing. This year, we have the privilege of sharing with you our driving force, our North Star over the past 19 years, none other than our students and their success. For so long, tertiary education has been limited to those who can pass rigorous exams or who can afford to pay large tuition fees, or both. According to the World Bank, only 36 out of 100 college-aged youth in the Philippines are enrolled in college. The figure is the same for Indonesia and even lower for other Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, Laos, PDR, and Cambodia. This has meant that youth at the margins of our society, the children of our farmers, fisherfolk, laborers, and service workers, have not been able to receive the quality education they deserve. And this is a disservice, not just to them, but also to our nation's progress and development. When we educate the youth at the bottom of the pyramid, they uplift not only themselves, but also their families and their communities. We at PHINMA have seen this firsthand over the years. In fact, many of our own exemplify how education can change the trajectory of people's lives. Allow me to share just two of their stories with you. At PHINMA University of Iloilo, we had a student named May who grew up selling fish and harvesting salt in the salt beds of Guimaras. Like many of our students, scarcity was a fact of life. Around 60% of our students qualify for in-house scholarships based on the Poverty Probability Index. Through this scholarship program, May earned her degree in management and began a career in the international hospitality industry. Then at Arauco University, we welcomed Jomar, who, like many in Nueva Ecija, was born to a family of farmers. Getting a degree seemed like a distant dream. A majority of our students are actually first generation or the first in their families to enter college. But Jomar would go on to earn not only his bachelor's degree, but also his master's and doctorate degrees, all from Arauco University. We believe that the success of our students is much more meaningful because of their lives' circumstances. Underserved, first-generation students who are able to pursue dignified lives and make the lives of others better too. Today, May Estuche Olpok is carrying out our mission as the International Operations Manager in Horizon Karawang, our first in a planned network of schools in Indonesia. And Dr. Jomar Urbano is the Dean of the College of Education in our Laguna network, serving students who were once just like him. These stories, replicated many times over the years, are no accident. By intent and design, PHINMA Education caters to those who need the education the most. We did away with prohibitive entrance exams, provided financial assistance and psychosocial interventions, and tailored our learning strategies to their capabilities and resources. We meet them where they are in order to take them where they want and deserve to be. With this, over the years, we witnessed our students uplift themselves. We've seen this through their academic results, like board exams, where they delivered high passing rates, even made it to be among the top-notchers, and made our schools among the best nationwide because of their performance. We've also witnessed them improve the lives of their families and communities as we see them gain employment and pay it forward. Seeing these outcomes improve every year, we believe is proof that the underserved youth are capable of so much when they are provided a pathway for growth and guidance to transform their lives. Keeping this in mind strengthens our hope and drives us to continue our mission further to serve more underserved students from different walks of life, students like May and Jomar. Our students and their success have allowed us to expand to 9 schools in the Philippines and 1 in Indonesia. It gives me great honor to pursue this mission along with all of you, our colleagues, our partners and friends, and hope that you are as excited as we are for how many more lives we can make better through education. Again, welcome to our press briefing and have a pleasant day, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Del Rosario. Although virtually, his message really transcends with us today. Indeed, seeing the growth of our students over the years continues to inspire us to do better and to push the mission further. Today, we are very happy to share with you the stories of our students and their success in the school year 2022 to 2023. To kick off our conversation on academic achievement and business development in the last school year, let us welcome on stage PHINMA Education President and CEO, Dr. Chito Salazar.
Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Pwede naman kayo sumagot, di ba? Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. At least yung mga kasama sa PHINMA Ed, sumagot kayo. Welcome. I'd like to thank everyone for being here. Our partners, like Anton and Doris, hello. From Mount Grace over there. Our academic partners, members of the press, Sir Riz, who I've known, I think, for the past 50 years. No? 20 years lang. So siguro, allow me to, before I go specifically into the details of PHINMA education, allow me to talk a little bit about the Philippine context in which PHINMA education was born. You know, what really drives us in PHINMA Ed at its very basic roots really is the problem of poverty in this country. And I think we know that this is a big issue. Despite the fact that things did improve through the years, we're still worried about 6 million people still living under $2 a day. That's $2 is 100 pesos now. So, well, the other day it was 110, now it's about 102 pesos. So we have 6 million people. Even though this actually improved, the poverty rate improved prior to the pandemic. During the pandemic, it increased once again. So we kind of like took a few steps back. If we look at underemployment and unemployment, this continues to be also a problem. Employment, as we know, is finally the way people earn an income to improve their lives. And the underemployment rate continues to be 12.9% in this country. That's the next slide. I think we got stuck in the slides because there's an internet problem. There you go. Okay. So the problem is, in this situation, the main way to rise out of poverty really is through education. Alam naman po natin yan. The silver bullet to poverty is education, to get a better education. And that's also what every Filipino believes. Unfortunately, in this country, we only have a gross enrollment rate of about 36% in tertiary. What does gross enrollment rate? That's the next slide. Gross enrollment rate is the number of people who are in the age group who are enrolled in tertiary. 36. More important po than the gross enrollment rate is the fact that 64%, therefore, who should be in tertiary schools are not in tertiary schools. I learned the other day that actually the statistics have improved. We're now at about 55% that graduate, 54% that graduate from senior high school. But of this 54% that graduate from senior high school, only 80% proceed to tertiary. That therefore goes down to about 45, 47. But of this 80% that proceeds, this is not just the experience of PHINMA Ed, but experience in the country. About 30% of those who enter freshman college, about 30% drop out in one semester. So sa unang semester pa lang, 1/3 of college students disappear. Ultimately, the ultimate graduation rate, if you go by cohort, is about 20% or less. And as we know, even if we want more kids to come to school, next slide, the other part of this equation is, of course, what has been discussed for the longest time, the quality of education. We all know about the learning poverty. Learning poverty, which is 91% in this country, essentially, at its very basic level, means grade 10 students, only 90% can read. I'm sorry, 10-year-old students, only 90% cannot read a simple sentence. That's 10-year-old. So isipin nyo po yung mga pamangkin nyo, yung mga anak po ninyo, only 10 out of 100 can read a simple sentence. It is within this context po that PHINMA Education was born. To do two things. Number one, well, not yet. To do two things. Number one is to precisely provide greater access to more Filipinos to get a tertiary education. And number two, to address not just that, kasi po ang estudyante, dahil nga po sa learning poverty, dahil po sa kakulangan ng kalidad sa basic education, the students come to us po with a grade 4 reading and math competency. And this is true po for almost all the students who graduate from our public schools. They come to us, only 3% are ready for college. So the PHINMA education system was set up precisely to make tertiary education more accessible and to be able to provide quality tertiary education that leads to employment to kids who come to us with very low competencies. It is this context po that PHINMA education was born in 2004. And almost 20 years later, we have actually reached 124,501 students, making us actually, from what we know, the largest school network in the country today. The funny thing is, during the pandemic po, we actually experienced our fastest growth of 30% year-on-year growth during the toughest times in this country's life, which was during the pandemic. This is about 123,000 for the Philippines and another 1,274 for Indonesia. All in all, we actually accepted 42,000 freshmen into our ranks last year. That's for us 42,000 because that's, as our chairman Ramon would say, that's equivalent to almost 4 new schools at 42,000 that we had to manage during the pandemic, at least right after the pandemic. But this is not just last year. If you look at our overall growth, since starting in 2004, we've actually been growing through the years pretty significantly. Now, the reason we believe we're actually seeing this kind of growth, the white bars represent our organic growth. We did suffer a small dip in 2020 during the pandemic. We went from 74,000 to 72,000. But the years after that, we grew at, as I said, 30% year on year. The main reason we believe is because we've found the sweet spot in terms of the right price and tuition fee for the right kind of kids that we're looking at, that we're trying to really target, which is the low-income kids who are who by intent and design are the kind of students we want, and we manage to bring them to the kind of quality of education and graduations that they need in order to get a good job. Before we go to our actual results in terms of academics, let me share with you something very important to us that we track. Next slide, which is retention and migration. Allow me to explain what retention and migration is. Alam niyo po sa merkado po namin, which is the low-income families, hindi po pag natanggap na namin sa freshman year, siguradong nakakapagtapos yan. As we said, in the country, the cohort graduation rate, that's a cohort graduation, it's only about 20%, even lower than 20%. In our case, to be honest, our cohort graduation rate a few years ago was about 21, 22. We've managed to bring that up to 35%. So a lot of our work is trying to keep kids in school. In our first year, in our first semester, we lose about 15%. And then every semester thereafter, we lose about another 10%. Kaya po, retention and migration is very important to us. We've tracked this, we've monitored this, we've created programs to find ways to keep kids in school. And many think that the main reason kids don't stay in school is because of financial capabilities. That is a major reason, except that when we looked at our students, marami naman pong sabihin nating kasing hirap na nakakapagtapos. So when we did our studies and did our research, it's much deeper than financials. It's the fact that many of our kids do not have the confidence nor the study skills to survive in college. Not because they don't have the potential or not because they're not bright enough, but because they never really got the chance to develop these skills in basic education. The second reason is 65% of our students are what we call first-generation college students, meaning they're the first member in their family na nakaabot po ng college. So lagi namin kinukwento, pag nag-iisa ka sa college, kapag nahirapan ka sa algebra, which is a first-year subject, or nahirapan ka sa accounting 1, which again is a first-year subject, or anatomy, which is again a first-year subject, pag nahihirapan ka, kanino ka tatakbo? Pag hindi mo po naintindihan kung anong tinuturo sa'yo, kanino ka magtatanong? Eh hindi rin po alam ng magulang nyo at wala kayong kapatid na matanungan. So for these reasons, we've created a whole system to try to help these kids not just succeed, but actually survive. Our first goal is to help them survive through college. Because for many of them, tertiary education is a struggle. But we're very fortunate we've managed to raise our retention and migration rates to this level. So we found a way to bring our tuition fees down and to improve them, get retention and migration. Ultimately, our goal is we would have not succeeded if we have not helped our kids get professional employment afterwards. And the first step in professional employment is board passing. So we have an 80% overall board passing rate. That's combined for all of the schools. And this kind of admittedly dropped during the pandemic. It used to be about 85% board passing rate. It dropped and we had 27 top-notchers. Ang lagi pong kinikwento kahit sa faculty namin, you know, I'm 100% sure other schools perform better than us in board passing. As a matter of fact, in some of our areas, in nursing, for example, in University of Iloilo, ang katapat po namin sa University of Iloilo are schools that perform 100% board passing sa nursing. That would be St. Paul's and probably St. Paul's. If you go to Cebu, ang katapat po namin dyan, CIM, Veles Medical School, and Cebu University of Cebu Doctors, both of whom are also 100% or are behind 90s. So I say, there are many schools that perform better than us in board passing, admittedly. 80% for us is not good enough. However, what makes a big difference to the PHINMA Education Group is not where our kids finish. There is, what I always share is there is no board exam for rich elite schools and a board exam for non-rich and elite schools. The board exam our kids take is exactly the same board exam that LaSalle takes, Ateneo takes, UST takes, everybody else takes. But what makes it different is where our students start. As I discussed earlier, our students come to us with a grade 4 reading and math competency. No entrance exam, no weeding out, no selection. We accept everyone and we commit to take them to this level of performance. With this, we've managed to achieve not just 80% board passing and top-notchers, but in certain degrees, we have been among the top schools in the nation. This drive for quality, for performance that gets our kids employed doesn't stop at the board, doesn't stop in the Philippines. We also monitor this very closely in Indonesia. These are although yung board passing sa Indonesia is not as, pinagsisigaw at the top of the mountain, but it's still something we monitor very closely. And even our students who have performed internationally, these are the international students of Southwestern University, also do well. 100% passing in nursing in Nepal. So soon, if you get sick in Nepal, for those of you who intend to climb Mount Everest, there's a good chance that the nurse serving you might be a graduate of PHINMA Education. So say hello to PHINMA Education since it started, 2004. Ito lang masasabi ko because I used to attend all of the graduations. I don't attend them anymore because there are probably 9 times 3, 27 graduations. So I just let Happy Tan do that. So, but I remember in my first years of graduation, and you'd stand up and shake the hands of all the students. I recall our students couldn't even look us in the face. No? Pag talagang obvious na nahihiya, walang confidence, pagkakyat sa stage, when they shake your hand, yung fingertips lang ang hawak. Or talagang while walking along the stage, talagang looking down the whole time. But now, if you check our kids now, they're confident. They all come in heels. Well, the girls at least. No? They all come dressed up, very confident. They really shake your hand now. They really greet you. So that, I think the change really is what makes them employable. They're much, much more confident as students and graduates and who they are. No? So, because of our continued growth, where are we going now? Well, first, we continue to expand. We have some schools which will hit 30,000 enrollment by next year. I think there are 2 schools looking at 30% enrollment. In order to meet this growth, we continue to expand. These are just some pictures of our campuses. We have expanded beyond Cabanatuan City in Nueva Ecija to hit South San Jose, which is one of the northernmost cities in Nueva Ecija. We also now have a campus, so it's a little bit funny because it's Cagayan de Oro College Iligan. So, but it's also illegal because what we noticed, there are quite a number of students coming from the western side of that area who are coming to Cagayan. So to make it easier to them, we've moved into Iligan. We continue to expand. We now have a dentistry building we've built a dentistry building. We're now in Metro Manila. As you know, we're in Metro Manila as early as 2017, but we have a facility now in Cubao. And Rizal Colleges of Laguna. We also entered Laguna aggressively. Next slide. And we're building a major, Upang is one of the schools that's hitting close to 30,000 students. So we're building a new facility in Upang. But beyond this, every single school, we have 9 schools in the campus in the Philippines. Every single school is building a major building this year. And we continue to buy land in order to meet the 30%. And we hope to hit, we believe we will hit upward of 150,000 students this school year. This is our school in Indonesia. We encourage you all to visit if you have the time. Medyo ma-traffic lang, no? Literally, no, from Jakarta, depende sa traffic, can take 4 hours. But this is our campus. We've also invested heavily in our campus in Indonesia, and we're looking to expand in Indonesia as well. It doesn't stop here, no? We've also realized that it's not enough for us to make the lives of our students better. But if we want this country to be a better place, we must also teach our students how to make the lives of others better. Whether it be the community, society, the country, or the world. We're always constantly reminded, of this 124,000 students, about 30% are criminology students. 30%. We probably have the largest network of criminology students who feed the police forces. So our Happy's goal is to build a private army. No, I'm just kidding. But we actually supply quite a number of our police force. And it's very important, as our board always reminds us, that we need to make sure, because we supply so many of the police forces in our different areas, that we make sure that they're trained with the right values and the right ethics. So for us, the teaching of making lives of others better has become a key pillar in our learning system. That we actually have integrated this, put up a team to focus on helping our kids learn the right values and right perspectives and ethics, so that when they finish and they're professionals, they also learn to give back to our country and to the community. Because of our experience in providing tertiary education to low-income students, we constantly are looking for ways to improve and do things better. So we actually network globally with other groups in order to continue to find our best practices. Alam niyo po, aaminin po namin, we don't have the resources to develop a lot of our own systems. So what we do is we look around the world and look at many other people who have actually worked already with low-income students around the world. So a lot of our technology, for example, comes from schools in the United States that work with inner-city kids or with retentions in other countries, because we learn from them and we take the technology and adapt it to our students. Although we've also taken the Bernido method from Bohol and adopted it to our students. So it's not just around the world. We look at the best practices of dealing with kids from low-income backgrounds. And in order to expand this, we've set up forums to learn from others. And we have a group called Education at the Margins, which is a network of like-minded institutions around the world that we can learn and exchange ideas from. We have also next slide, we've also not forgotten our own responsibility to the world. So we are investing heavily in solar and water conservation systems, which we know is all important right now, and water and things like sewage treatment plants. Our goal is to eliminate whatever remaining are deep wells in our schools within the next 1 or 2 years, and just rely on natural systems. Last but not the least, we've set up our schools also to be a response unit to all of the communities we're at. So whenever there's a storm, earthquake, flood, our doors are open through what we call a helping hands system. Our schools have become evacuation centers during storms, during floods and everything, and our communities respond immediately to whatever is needed by the city or by the municipality. Ito po ang resulta ng PHINMA Ed. Alam niyo po what drives us when we talk about this, what we tell each other is, okay, we've reached 124,000 students. 124. But there are about 1.4, 1.5 million senior high school graduates that go into college every year. Every year, 1.5. Our first comment is of this 1.5 million that go into college, as we said earlier, 30% drop out in one semester. That's 500,000 students. So the numbers look good, 1.5 million coming in. It's almost about 80%. But 1/3 of that disappears in one semester. So we tell our people, yes, we're 124,000, but we still lose a significant chunk of students in first semester or through the whole life of college. What can we do about them? Yes, we had 42,000 freshmen last year, but there's still 20% of graduating senior high school students who cannot afford to go to college. And yes, we have an employability rate of 80% and a board 70%, and a board passing rate of 80%. But that still means 20% of our kids don't pass the board exams. This is what drives us. What drives us is, even if we feel we've done enough, there's just so much more to do. More kids to help, more kids within our system to help finish, and more kids who end our system to make sure that they pass and succeed. So yun lang po. Ito po ang PHINMA Education. Maraming salamat po sa oras. Maraming salamat po. Magandang umaga sa inyo lahat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Chito. Now to present the annual financial statements, let us call on stage our PHINMA Education Chief Finance Officer, Ms. Daisy Montenola.
Good morning to our business partners and friends from the press. So I am pleased to report the audited financial statements of PHINMA Education Holdings for school year 22-23 because our year end ends in March 31, 2023. So with the growth of our enrollment by 30%, this gave us a revenue of 4.5 billion. So this is a 19% increase over last year with a net income of 1 billion 85. So this is our first time to reach the 1 billion mark. And this is also 24% profit margin. Our EBITDA remains strong at 1.5 billion. So this is also 34% EBITDA margin. So if you compare it with the previous year, our net revenues is, as mentioned earlier, has a 19% growth, and our net income is higher by 10% over last year. However, in 21-22, there is a spillover coming from the previous school year because of the late start of academic classes the previous year due to pandemic. So if we take out the 200 million spillover in net income, our growth in net income should have been around 36%. So that's a significant increase over last year. And for our, next slide please. Okay. So for our total assets, it's at 14 billion. So this is 12% higher over last year. And the growth is mainly due to the capital expenditure that was spent during the year. So that's around 900 million in our investment as part of our expansion plans and for our older schools as we support the continuing enrollment growth, and also we also invested heavily in our newer schools. For our equity, it's at 7.6 billion. So the increase of 12% is attributed to the increase in our net income of 1 billion. Of course, reduced by the dividend, we also continue to give dividend to our shareholders. When it comes to total liabilities, it also grew from 5.5 last year to 6.2 this year. So this year, there's an increase in our long-term debt by around 550 million to support also, to finance our capital expenditure. But if we look at the profile of our term loan, the maturity is about 4 to 5 years, and the average interest rate of these loans is around 5.9%. And the current ratio improved to 2.03:1. Debt to equity ratio remain at same level of 0.80, which is our schools and PEHI still below leverage. So our per share also improved to 403.03 per share. And so that ends my report on the financials. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Chito and Miss Daisy, for delivering the report. Indeed, our students are really capable of so much when they are empowered with the opportunities to do so. Their success is our pride, and their success reaffirms our effort that we are doing something right. Our dear guests, we present to you our just cause, our driving force, and our mission, making lives better through education.
Sasamahan kita. Sasamahan kita.
Mimithi, inaasam, pangarap na walang hanggan. Bawat ngiti, nagniningning, magsisilbing liwanag sa dilim. Natatanaw mo ba? Maaabot mo ba? Tanong sa bawat bukas, masasagot mo na. Mahaba man ang daan, madami man niyang hadlang, huwag kang mag-alala, sasamahan kita. Buksan ang kinabukasan, tuklasin ang kayamanan ng puso, nangangarap. Bawat hakbang patungo sa pangarap. Pangarap. Pangarap.
Lupakan yang lalu, jangan muterkan, genggam tanganku hadapi semua. Usaha dahulu, kemenangan datang, biarkan hatimu bercahaya terang. Kan ku bantu, kan ku pandu, tiap langkahmu ada diriku. Keras hidup membentukmu, semua mungkin saat bersama.
Berlarilah jauh ke depan, untuk meraih masa depan yang aman, gemilang. Tiap langkahmu wujudkan mimpimu. Sasamahan kita. Mimpimu. Sasamahan kita. Tiap langkahmu wujudkan mimpimu.
Huwag kang mag-alala, kan bersama, di ka na mawawala. Meron kang pagkasama, kan bersama, di ka na mag-iisa. Magsama-sama tayo, ating nagtagumpay. Buksan ang kinabukasan, tuklasin ang kayamanan ng pusong lumalaban. Bawat hakbang patungo sa pangarap. Buksan ang kinabukasan, tuklasin ang kayamanan ng pusong lumalaban. Bawat hakbang patungo sa pangarap. Sasamahan kita. Hamon tapang tagumpay. Hamon tapang tagumpay. Hamon tapang tagumpay.
Okay, so aside from the fact that we featured our schools, these are our actual students and their stories. So we are now moving to the most awaited part of our event today. We will now open the floor for questions. For our live audience, you may go to the mics located at the center of the floor. And for our audience online, feel free to send your questions through the comment section. To begin, may we call on again Dr. Salazar and Ms. Montenola on stage. Of course, joining them are Mr. Christopher Tan, our country chief for the Philippines, Ms. Trissa Menardo, our Chief Strategy Officer, Mr. Francis Larios, our Chief Learning Officer, and Dr. Raimundo Reyes, our country chief for Indonesia. Okay, so before we start, here are a few reminders. For those who will be asking questions, we ask you to first state your name and the organization you represent. Please limit your inquiries to one question and one follow-up to ensure that those with questions can be accommodated. Finally, please raise your hand to signify your interest to ask questions. A representative from our agency partner, Grupo Agatep, will approach you with a microphone. Now, let's start with our media Q&A. Okay, we can start there, sir.
Yes, good morning. I'm Red Mendoza from the Manila Times. So, ask ko lang kay Doc Chito, of course, we know that that PHINMA has been very much aggressive, or not necessarily aggressive, but very much hopeful in the country's future with with its education platforms. But of course, the big question here is, of course, when we last had the discussion before in our previous interview with you, sinabi niyo po na ang ini-aim niyo po is to help more students who are in financial distress, sabihin na natin. How is PHINMA now coping up with the students who are in financial distress, and how it does affect ito sa bottom line ng PHINMA education?
Salamat sa tanong. Ikaw lagi mo iniipit, ikaw talaga. Una, siguro, especially nung pandemic. So, the way our system works is our tuition fees adjust depende po sa kakayahan ng mga estudyante natin. No? So, meron tayong full tuition fee. Pero yung halimbawa, pag medyo, if the kids come from lower income, we actually give 50%. And during the pandemic, we actually gave 75% scholarships, meaning nagbabayad ng yan ng 25. What does 75% mean? At actually means in some courses, hindi po to equal all courses. No? Kasi some courses, kung may lab, medyo tumataas. But it means right now at HK 75, meron po kami mga kurso na 75% per sem. No? That's what do you call this? Only 15,000 per year for a college degree. Tapos po, dahil po napansin namin na yung aming rack rate, yung highest level namin, umaakyat, we changed it from percentages. So meron kaming flat rate na 10,000 pesos, which was equivalent to HK 50 maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. Hindi lang po yan. I think we're now studying the possibility of offering a 5,000 peso per semester course. No, 5,000. Kasi nga napansin namin na meron pa rin, kahit at 7,500, meron pa rin mga pamilya na talagang nahihirapan pa rin to cover the tuition fee. So we're trying to aim for even as low as 5,000 peso tuition fee. No? So as a result of these different ladders po, despite the fact that on paper, halimbawa, when we report to CHED, despite the fact that our tuition fees, let's say, have gone up 3% year on year, our actual tuition fees have stayed the same. So if you look at maybe our past 10 years, our average revenue per student is only 13,000 per year. 13,000 per semester. 26,000 per year. So roughly 13 per semester. No? So we actually continue to find ways to continue to drop our fees in order to more accessible to most students. The way we do this is we really manage our costs really well. So that's really what drives us the most, no? To manage. But please, when we say we manage our costs, it's not our people, no? Our salary rates continue to improve for our faculty especially, although it's for the entire system. Kami nga po natatapatan po namin ang sweldo po ng gobyerno. We actually peg our salaries to the salary rates of the government para we don't have a problem getting teachers. As a result, our turnover rates are actually very small for our faculty. And then so we operate ang tinatanggal talaga namin yung We try to reduce the number of people, non-teaching. We try to manage all the other things to keep our costs low. So that even at 5,000 pesos per sem, tingin po namin, happy, tingin ko ha. Tingin ko meron pa rin kaming gross margin yan. In other words, we'll still make a profit of that. As a result, we've managed to grow. So itong parang baliktad nga po eh. Itong effort po namin na to keep our tuition fees low has been one of the reasons why we continue to grow.
My last question na lang po, in the curriculum side, ngayon nga po we had this, yun nga po, you mentioned nga po that there is a learning poverty, and of course there are ways for the improvement nga ng curriculum both on the basic education and on the basic education front. Sa inyo po, of course, you know, some of your schools are autonomous under ng CHED. And do you plan po ba on aligning po ba your curriculum in terms dun sa sinasabi nga natin, employability ng ating mga students? Because we know na hanggang ngayon pa rin, yun nga, the studies shows nga na hindi pa rin lahat kayang mga sentences. So how are we going to align our curriculum doon sa mga plans ng DepEd, especially nga doon sa EDCOM nila, and what do you think would be the best curriculum that would fit the employability rates of the students?
Siguro yung big picture muna dito is based on our mission. We have to align our curriculum along two things, no? First is yung context ng students namin, where they're coming from, but the other thing is where they're going, industry, no? Normally those are very misaligned, no? So we have done things sa aming curriculum, whether it's teacher training or in our modules, no, to help our students. So for example, very minor example, let's say hirap sila sa trigonometry. But for example, where they are going, for example, let's say nursing, na hindi naman kakailangan ng trigonometry, you can use the instructional time there. For example, you can repurpose that na imbis na turuan mo pa sa algebra ng trigonometry, meaning to put more time there, you can restructure that into so that they now learn science more, they learn nursing better. You can give more tutoring time, for example. So it's repurposing that. Another thing that we can do, or that we actually do, is we interview, when we redesign a curriculum, and we've done this recently with IT and with nursing, and right now with our business program, what we do is we actually interview companies, kasi sabi mo nga, di ba minsan, yun ang reklamo ng companies eh, parang when they come to us, there's a skills misalignment. Right? So, okay, di-interview na natin, di ba? So, we talk to them and then we say, okay, this is our resume of our current curriculum. Would you hire this student? And then they give us feedback. And then, okay, sige. So, we go back, we redesign the curriculum and then ask them again. We have that kind of process, we call it the career pathways process. Who are like that, they really want the best for our students. And therefore, if there's something that our systems do not cover, they find a way to help our students.
Red, klaruhin ko lang, no? Hindi po kami, wala pa kami, we do not have an autonomous school.
Ay, wala.
At saka, we have to align with CHED. Isa nga sa mga ano namin, early on, nung tinayo po ang PHINMA Ed, tinanong po kami ng board namin, hindi ba dapat natin hinahabol ang level 4 or level 5 or COE or COD? We do have, I think, 1 or 2 programs that are COE, which is major criminology, and I think, pero we don't run after it because ultimately for us what's important is our students. So napansin po namin pwedeng malaking gastos pagdating sa ganyan eh. So hindi po namin hinahabol. But of course we're aligned with CHED to make sure.
Okay. Thank you po.
Tama, Red.
Okay, thank you, Sir Red, for your questions. Will anyone want to ask another question? Okay, over there.
Hello, good morning, everyone. So my name is Angela. So my question is, apart from these schools that you're already being involved with, there are other schools that you want to expand to your program. Thank you.
we're looking at several areas in the country, but our major expansion, I'll pass it on to Dr. Reyes, is basically Indonesia. But in the Philippines, we knew that the old schools would plateau at some point. And so we identified the more urban areas such as Metro Manila, Laguna, potentially other places in the Philippines for us to have a smaller, a kind of mini network. It's like a mini PHINMA Ed, where we will have multiple schools because the density of the population will allow us to actually absorb the growth. So in Metro Manila, we already have 2 schools. We potentially are looking at 2 more, probably even 5 total. Same thing with Laguna and Southern Luzon. And there are a couple of other places, Cavite, Davao, that have the same kind of demographic profile that we think are possible areas for expansion for us. But I'll pass it on to Dr. Reyes for Indonesia.
Hello, good morning. So right now in Indonesia, we're in Karawang. It's a city about 70 kilometers east of Jakarta. But so we're looking to expand also in Indonesia. Maybe the most immediate areas for expansion would be Surabaya. We're looking at Surabaya. We're looking also at Jakarta and other places as well in West Java. Our long-term plans for Indonesia is to expand to about 10 locations in Indonesia.
And of course, there might be a third country or 4th country. So those are other parts that our business development team are looking at.
Okay, thank you, Sir Happy and Sir M1. Thank you as well for the question. Do we have any more questions? Okay, over there. Kindly approach the mic. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you so much for what you do in PHINMA. I'm Kit Season. I'm the HR head of Willis Towers Watson. And we've started the program in WTW where we part-timers from PHINMA in their junior year. We're already teaching them how it is in a corporate setting. So I just want to ask, have you partnered with anyone in the industry, especially when it comes to BPOs, in terms of trying to align the syllabus or curriculum so they're more employment ready? Because HR people like me were looking for talent, and as you mentioned, one of our challenges is the competency gap. So we may have candidates, but they don't necessarily fit what we need. Yeah.
Yes. We've, in very specific programs, we've partnered with trade associations across the country. So there are groups in the BPO and IT sector that we've worked with, and also the trade associations for construction for our civil engineering people and our students, and some hospitals for our nurses. What's key here, as we've learned, is really to ask the employers, what are the competencies you need now, and what are the competencies you need 5 years from now? And so we, as Fran said, we then redefine the curriculum to be able to respond to those. But here's an important lesson that we're learning the past few years that did not seem to be too obvious at the start. We'd like to think, we sometimes tend to think that if you build it, they will come. It's not necessarily true. Unfortunately, even if we have all of these opportunities for our students, a lot don't actually follow through. They are sometimes shy to even go into the interview. Sometimes if the opportunity is there, they won't show up. It goes back to what Dr. Salazar said earlier about that sense of self-efficacy, that sense of confidence. And so what we need to remember, it's not just about the skills. It's about the attitude towards improving their own lives, and they have that. But that belief that they can actually do it is an important part of our work. And then third, that part of core work skills, not just technical skills suited for a particular industry, but the ability to unlearn, relearn, and reinvent themselves as the skills that the industry needs evolve. I think those are two important areas that educational institutions tend to forget. And so when we have these kinds of partnerships, we have to keep in mind those two additional dimensions.
Thank you so much.
I'd just like to add, but these are more examples. When we were doing the career pathways interviews with some of the companies, like we were interviewing 10 companies in Indonesia. So sometimes towards the end of the interviews, they'd say something like, are you open to sending your students to us for internships? And so sometimes those things happen, and then we tell them, yes, we are. And then we make the connections with the schools so that can happen with our redesigned curriculum. In fact, another good example of that is when we redesigned the fine arts curriculum of Southwestern. And there, what happened there was it really became a more concrete partnership between Toon City, which is like some sort of BPO for animation, and our students, wherein the curriculum, they really intertwine study and work hours in Toon City. So those are a few of the examples, aside from what Happy said.
Yep. Just an affirmation, those that we've hired so far as part-timers, 2 of them, because we started just last year, we've converted them full-time in our investment teams, and they're doing well. So
Thank you, ma'am.
you're doing a great job.
Thank you so much, Ms. Kit, for your question. And we're glad to know our students are actually doing well. We hope to send more soon. And we still have time for 2 more questions if anyone has any. Sir, kindly introduce yourself as well. Thank you.
Magandang umaga, mga partners. No? Congratulations first to PHINMA Education. My question is medyo operational. No? So, similar to Mount Grace Hospitals, no? You guys partner with different entities, no? Different schools. Ang first question is, up to what extent are you standardizing? No? Lalo na, there are expansion plans. You mentioned about several more in Metro Manila, Indonesia, and then probably Cavite area, South Luzon, etc. Again, similar to Mount Grace, we're also, still partnering with different hospitals, no, to be placed within our network. So, ang unang tanong is, up to what extent ba ang standardization na ginagawa nyo? I suppose aspects like system, IT, and my own curiosity is on the academic side. No? And how is that going so far? Yan lang.
Isa yan po sa mga, isa po yan, Sir Noel. Sir Noel, by the way, just in all transparency, Mount Grace is a partner of one of our schools. They're managing our hospital in Southwestern University. We're good partners and good friends. That's actually one of the ways we manage to maximize our economies of scale. It's actually easiest for us it was easiest for us to standardize our business systems and operations. So there is a lot of business that goes into running schools. Things like our faculty loading, by the way, is something that is very important to us. How we manage the faculty efficiently so that we can maximize their time. Kasi sa ibang eskwelahan, yan pong mahirap eh. May mga faculty na namimili ng oras, namimili ng kahit anong floor. I will only teach at this time on this floor. Ayaw nila umakyat ng hagdan, mga ganyan. We manage that very efficiently to make sure that we maximize the times of our students and our faculty. Now, those things are standardized. We do have a standardized IT system. We're actually installing a new one over the next few years. But prior to that, we're running a new system. All of the management systems, Daisy, for example, is our CFO, so all of the finance systems across the group are also standardized. What was most challenging has really been our academics. We do have a lot of the principles, the themes that are, but I will invite our country chief of the Philippines, academic manager, to share where we're standardized specifically, and then what challenges, I'll share later on what the challenges are.
Hello, my name is Glenn. So we've actually standardized a lot of things in terms of academics. I would start with academic policies. So for example, when do we promote a student to the next year level, for example, or do we retain the student in this program, especially if it is a board program? Connected to it, we've also standardized the curriculum. So in terms of curriculum, we estimate that we're standard at about 90%, mainly because we also give leeway to certain electives that are important in the regions. But for the main subjects, normally these are standard. And even the placement of the subjects. And it's quite tied up to the academic policies because we have certain programs like, for example, a common final exam, wherein we mimic the environment of a board exam, wherein it's high stakes and the person who made the exam is not your teacher. So we want something like this subject is being offered on the same semester so that all schools in our network will take the same exam for that particular subject. And finally, we've actually standardized our modules. So I think this is one of the advantages of being a network because we can get one particular teacher to write all of our modules for that particular subject, and yet thousands of sections of that subject would take advantage of that module. So we have a uniform set of modules for all of the subjects. These are the lessons that and the set of activities that the students receive at the beginning of the semester. And the teacher's role now inside the classroom is to deliver those activities and become coaches for the students as they answer the activities. So there.
Yung challenge, Noel, was dalawa. Yung pinaka-simple is when we started operating in Indonesia, although medyo pareho yung merkado, parehong mahirap, pareho yung mga pangarap ng mga bata sa Indonesia, pero the regulatory system is different. So, and there's some of the rules about faculty loading, so we have to adjust. And then even some of the problems, like retention, is not as big an issue in Indonesia. The second problem is whenever you try to standardize, especially academics, alam ni Ma'am Joyce to, tsaka alam ni Ma'am Doris to, especially academics, minsan yung kanya-kanyang faculty may sariling pananaw sa this is what's best for the kids. No? And sometimes our perspectives are driven by our background or experience. Yung kabataan po namin, yung mga estudyante namin, naiiba yung mga estudyante namin kasi nga they come to us with very weak competencies. So we need to adjust to them rather than expect them to adjust to us. So, but the problem is many of our previous systems, our previous faculties, don't want to adjust kasi ganito yan dapat ganito yung pagtuturo niyan, dapat ganyan. But it took time, but right now I don't think we have that problem anymore. We've managed to, I think, our community has all become very mission-driven and very knowledgeable about our kids. So that was a big help. Salamat.
Thank you. We have a question here. Ay.
Magandang umaga sa inyo lahat. Thank you to PHINMA Education for this invitation. I'm Doris from the Private Education Assistance Committee. For those who are not familiar with the work that we do, we're co-implementing the voucher program of the Department of Education and ESC for junior high. Congratulations to PHINMA Education, very impressive. I think when we featured PHINMA Ed in Leader, and that's when I heard about how you were doing things. In fact, at that time, I had very little connectivity in Pangasinan, so I had to go to the University of Pangasinan to be able to to be able to really do the online webinar with PHINMA Ed. It's really not a question, but comments. No, when we saw the graph of increasing enrollment, even during the time of the pandemic and pre-pandemic, when we had problems with enrollment in tertiary education because of free tuition, the law that came out, UAQTE. And that all the private HEIs have been complaining about the decline in enrollment. That is one thing that I saw now with PHINMA. And to me, have you had no problems with free tuition in SUCs and LUCs? Or as what you said, you found the sweet spot? Therefore, even with no, free tuition, you also had, an increase in enrollment. So it's really more a comment from your end than a question. Yung second ko, this is very honest, and Chito knows this. Because of the work that we do, we go all around the Philippines, and everywhere I go, I'd say, oh, may PHINMang tatayo dyan. When I go to Iligan, oh, may PHINMA na dyan, Doris. The smaller private HEIs are very threatened with PHINMA. And, we always talk about, si Happy kasi, we always talk about complementarity, between public and private. But among private HEIs, they say, paano naman tayo, even among us, how do we complement? Because when PHINMA, starts building, you really will affect the enrollment of the smaller private HEIs catering to the same clientele as PHINMA. So as leaders already, in this space, how can we also, do that kind of a network and try to see how we can help each other out? Ayun, I'm speaking now as PEAC.
Thank you, Ms. Torres. Sir Chito?
Sige, let's begin with the less controversial and go to the more controversial. Yung una siguro, a little bit also from well, ano yung una? Ay, free tuition. You know what? One of the things we learned, even though we've adjusted our curriculum, for example, and did all of these things with our kids na low income, one of the key secret in really dealing with low income students who are behind, who are grade 4 nga, grade 5 when they reach, I'll explain why it's connected. No? Really is to just, the funny thing is all of the research in the US shows you have to impose the same exact standards on kids who are further behind. You cannot adjust your standards to them because then they never catch up. That you have to demand of them the same level of expectation as kids who are equal to them. You just have to change the teaching styles, and then there's more coaching and mentoring. Pero kung bagsak pa rin. That's one of the things we had to teach. And kids, believe it or not, well, I'm sure you all believe it, rise to meet the standards. They will find ways to meet it. And this was our experience when in the state when the state university system happened. We were worried. Eman was head of the Philippines back then. We were worried, like anything. But what we realized is that families are even more, especially low-income families, are extremely conscious of where they spend their money. So they will always choose. Parang kesa babayad ako ng mas konti sa isang eskwelahan na hindi ako sigurado sa passing, mas handa ako magbayad dito na mas sigurado yung passing rate. Ito yung natutunan ko kay Franz. Pagkausap namin yung magulang, there was a time in our life when our passing rates were as low as 30%. Sabi natin, parang sinasabi natin sa magulang, sige mag-enroll kayo dito, your child has a 30% chance of passing the board. for bad passing rates. What we've noticed, as long as our academic quality is good, the families will come to us. As long as our results are good, the families are willing to spend to come to us. So we actually did not suffer during the free state universities because almost everywhere are, parang it's value for money. They're getting good value for money, which goes to the last point. Alam mo kami, whenever I'm asked by these small schools, what is our secret? So for example, in what I learned just recently is St. Jude, which has grown pretty quick in Manila, but we're among giants kasi nandiyan yung UST, nandiyan yung Perpetual, Olfu, etc. Pag tinatanong ako, bakit kayo nakakapag-grow kayo ng malaki? Sabi ko, hindi ko maintindihan ba't ano yung sekreto. Ang sekreto naman namin is our attention to academic learning. I do not mind, and we're very happy to work with schools that pay equal attention to academic learning. But to be honest, and this is born not of, because in our process of looking for schools to purchase, I have seen the landscape of Philippine schools in the country, especially provincial schools. Many of them do not pay attention to academic grades. Many of them couldn't care less if their kids graduate with 30%. I know because I've been inside these schools. I've spoken to the owners because at some point in time, we might have even tried to buy them. We've looked at their financials. We looked at where they spend. Their salaries continue to remain low. They don't invest in the right things. Their bathrooms aren't taken care of. The students, the computers are old or crappy. I don't mind. There are fire traps, literally fire traps, no fire exits, narrow stairways, etc. Sa akin, I don't mind competing. We're happy to compete with people who provide the same level of quality to the kids and pay same attention to kids. And this is not, in many of the areas, they're suffering because we came in. They were like that before we came in. so sa akin, okay lang. I mean, Ramon, for example, is very, very, how do we say this, fair. And he says, if they are going to compete the same way. So in some of our areas, for example, Iloilo, we've seen schools, Cebu, very aggressively, schools build to match our building plans. Okay lang sa amin yan. We're happy to fight it out. But what I don't understand is why schools like this even ask us what is our secret. Our secret is academic quality. Our secret is providing the quality our students need and ask for. And kasi the tradition in this country is, ibaba natin tuition fee natin and let's just provide them low-cost education too, which I think is not the way to go. No? I think we've managed to show that you can provide low tuition fees and provide good quality education. But that being said, we're very happy to share our technology. We don't naman hide these things. We talk about them all the time when asked. But our biggest experience is that in all of the times we've talked about it, we're confident that many groups cannot adopt it because they don't have the same heart our people. I'm sure there are, no? I'm not saying everybody, but it really begins there. Dapat may puso talaga para sa estudyante. Alam mo, lagi namin pinag-usapan, nagugulat din kami minsan sa financial results namin. Kasi for us, it's clear that the financial results are the result of our efforts to improve our quality learning. So that follows. Yun lang.
Thank you so much. We have really good questions so far, and thank you for our panelists for responding. We have time for just one more question from online.
This question is from Zon Ballesteros of IBC 13. Last Palace briefing, CHED said that they submit long-term, medium-term, and immediate action plans to address the nursing shortage in the country. This includes the lifting of a 10-year moratorium on the creation of new nursing programs. Ano ang participation o hakbang ng PHINMA Ed to produce more nurses in the country? Not just to produce, but to create quality nurses.
Una kasi dapat walang moratorium ang CHED. Matagal po namin yung pananawagan na dapat tanggalin ang minority. Kasi you can't predict, right? You can't predict when professionals are needed. So, and it takes 4 years to produce professionals. So if they remove the moratorium today, because there's a shortage today, the nurses won't graduate till 4 years from now. that respond. No? Actually, the market knows best. You know, the growth in nursing began before the pandemic. It began, and I'm Sina Noel, the shortage of nursing began long before the pandemic. And we saw the enrollments in the pandemic in nursing probably begin about 2017. Pero ipit yung mga school kasi hindi pwede mag-respond kasi nga may moratorium. But they only removed the moratorium last year. Last year, that's kind of like 5 years late. So our first call is let the market decide and remove all types of moratoriums. Second, right now, we're seeing growth in all of our schools. Some of our schools have freshmen as big as 1,500 to 1,700 freshmen in nursing. The challenges, of course, are finding the nursing teachers. We don't have this problem. We've managed to find ways to solve this problem. Siyempre nakatingin ako kay Mel kasi siya yung nagtanong eh. But so we are seeing the growth. We are accepting as many nursing students as we can. But to ensure quality, we watch the standards. No? So we lose about probably about more than 50% of the freshmen due to quality standards. Hindi due to retention, due to financials, but due to quality standards. And our board passing rates in nursing are pretty good, pretty good. Actually, nursing is one of the higher performance. We have a school that did 100%. And it for large numbers. Oh, It was network-wide. I'm sorry, our network in the last board did 100%. And that's not for 1 or 2 people. Huh? That's in the hundreds at 100%. So,
Okay. Are there any final questions? Okay. Okay. Would you like to comment on that, sir? Okay, there we go. Okay, so
Hi, good morning. I'm Patricia Padilla from Microsourcing Philippines. My question is there any programs or initiatives of PHINMA Education that you plan to collaborate with industry partners for students and alumni to be more competitive, not just locally, but also in the global market? Thank you so much.
I'll start, Franz will follow. Basically, we have a group within PHINMA Education that which we call ACE, Alumni and Corporate Engagement Team. They work with the career path people of team learning to jointly talk to employers, both local and national, to really tailor our curriculum to the needs of the employers. And what's critical here is that over the past few years, we've realized that the big problem with traditional views of education is that the degree, the diploma, is kind of the end game. We have to flip it. It cannot be the degree or the diploma. It needs to be employment. The degree and the diploma are just steps towards employment. And employment broadly speaking, right, including self-employment. But particularly for our students, the opportunity to work with a reliable cash flow is a significant progress compared to what their parents went through, particularly if they were from the agricultural sector. And so we want to be able to, from day one, get the I need to be employed mentality into our students. And it might get to a point where if, for example, a student will have an opportunity confronting them now to work, even while they're studying, we may need to say, that's okay. Even if they say, okay, I'll stop first. Because the point is employment. What's important for us in our future self is to be able to create a system that makes it easy for that student to continue acquiring the skills that they need to thrive in that job, even as they are working. And the pandemic actually helped us with that, because if the pandemic allowed us to bring the school to the home, why can't we bring the school to the workplace? We haven't figured that out exactly, but that excites us in terms of being able to serve these kinds of students. When Dr. Salazar said about 36% of Filipinos of college age are not in college, just imagine the 64% of the students who are potential students, Filipinos who are working, who could potentially pursue their degree if we figure out a way to make it more convenient for them and for their employers. So that's something we haven't figured out yet, but we were excited to do.
So Happy gave a very good answer. So I'll just give 1 or 2 examples. So, so like in our Career Pathways program that I was explaining a while ago, part of that is helping students like create this body of work that they can show to employers. So it's some sort of like a portfolio. So in the redesign of our IT and our business programs, we put in specific subjects which should be like portfolio building subjects, so that when you just don't go to the employer with your resume or with your CV, but if they say, oh, you're a programmer, give us a sample of your work, they have something to show. So in some of those instances, if there are opportunities in the area, like in Karawang, our dean there has connections with some industry insiders. So sometimes some of those portfolio subjects, they can use that to actually work with an actual client, for example, while they're studying. So, and that's also happening for Southwestern, where the university, where they do some of their study hours, some of their portfolio building activities with Tune City itself, who can be their future employer. So that's an example of a partnership that can help our students. So that you already have the proof of what you can do before you even graduate.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you panelists for your responses and insights, and thank you of course to our audience for your participation. This concludes the Our Students, Their Success PHINMA Education Press Briefing. If you do have more questions, please feel free to send an email to ir.pehi@phinmaed.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can with the response. Thank you very much for joining us today in celebrating our students and their success. Sorry, sir. Oh, okay. Anyway, we hope that you continue working with us as we pursue our mission of making lives better through education. Thank you.